Okay, if you remember, we left off in the middle of one of the testimonies last week, and it was, the name of it is Sketch of Experience, and it got kind of interesting there at the end. I don't know if anybody actually kind of read along, did you? Okay. She's had a very trying time so far. Her husband has been sick for some time, and this is a continuation of the events that have unfolded. And so she has related a vision that she has seen, and it's quite alarming to her, and she doesn't quite understand what is going on. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to read the vision again. Oh, do we need the page that we're on 578. Is everyone there? Okay. She begins, this is the vision, and I'll just go over it once and then we will jump into it, catch up on it. Let's see. Okay. I'm going to jump into the middle of the paragraph here. It says, that night I dreamed that I was in Battle Creek looking out from the side glass at the door and saw a company marching up to the house, 2 and 2. They looked stern and determined. I knew them well and turned to open the parlor door to receive them, but thought I would look again. The scene was changed. The company now presented the appearance of a Catholic procession. One bore in his hand a cross, another a reed. And as they approached, the one carrying a reed made a circle around the house, saying 3 times, "This house is proscribed. The goods must be confiscated. They have spoken against our holy order." Terror seized me, and I ran through the house, out of the north door, and found myself in the midst of a company, some of whom I knew, but I dared not speak a word to them for fear of being betrayed. I tried to seek a retired spot where I might weep and pray without meeting eager, inquisitive eyes wherever I turned. I repeated frequently, if I could only understand this, if they will tell me what I have said or what I have done. I wept and prayed much as I saw our goods confiscated. I tried to read sympathy or pity for me in the looks of those around me, and marked the countenances of several whom I thought would speak to me and comfort me if they did not fear that they would be observed by others. I made one attempt to escape from the crowd, but seeing that I was watched, I concealed my intentions. I commenced weeping aloud and saying, if they would only tell me what I have done or what I have said. My husband, who was sleeping in a bed in the same room, heard me weeping aloud and awoke me. My pillow was wet with tears, and a sad depression of spirits was upon me. And that's where we left it last week. This vision really startled her, shook her, because she was equating her home area and the people that she knew, and the Lord was giving her a vision of what was going to be happening. So as we go, we're going to continue our little story here, and it gets a little deeper, and it does kind of explain itself. The Lord is very good that he does explain things. So if I can have a volunteer, we're going to read 3 paragraphs because this testimony is quite long. We'll see if we can't finish up the second half of it this week. Any volunteers? No?
I'll volunteer.
Okay, Mike said first. Mike's hand went up first.
Okay.
You want to go?
Go ahead.
We've got some mics. No, they need it for them.
It's just for the...
I know.
So we're starting with brother and sister.
Yes.
Brother, in read 3, all right?
Yes, please.
Brother and sister Hal accompanied us to West Windsor, where we were received and welcomed by brother and sister Carmen. Sabbath, the first day, we met the brethren and sisters from the churches in the vicinity and had freedom in hearing our testimony and bearing our testimony tonight. The refreshing Spirit of the Lord rested upon those who felt a special interest in the work of God. Our conference meetings were good, and nearly all bore testimony that they were strengthened and greatly encouraged. In a few days, we found ourselves again at Battle Creek after an absence of about 3 months. On the Sabbath, March 16th, my husband delivered before the church the sermon on sanctification, photographically reported by the editor of the Review and published in volume 29 and 18. He also spoke with clearness in the afternoon and on first day forenoon. I bore my testimony with usual freedom. Sabbath, the 23rd, we spoke with freedom to the church in Newton and labored with the church at Convis the following Sabbath, the first day. We designed to return north and went 30 miles, but were obliged to turn back on account of the condition of the roads. My husband was terribly disappointed at the cold reception which he met at Battle Creek, and I was also grieved. We decided that we could not bear our testimony to this church till they gave better evidence that they wished their services, and concluded to labor in Convis and moderate till the roads should improve. The 2 following Sabbaths we spent at Convis and have proof that a good work was done, as the best of fruits were now seen. I came home to Battle Creek like a weary child who needed comforting words and encouragement. It is painful for me to state that we were received with great coldness by our brethren, from whom 3 months before I had parted in perfect union, excepting on the point of our leaving home. The first night spent in Battle Creek, I dreamed that I had been laboring very hard and had been traveling for a purpose of attending a large meeting, and that I was very weary. Sisters were arranging my hair and adjusting my dress, and I fell asleep. When I awoke, I was astonished and indignant to find that my garments had been removed, and there had been placed upon me old rags, pieces of bed quilts, knotted and sewed together. Said I, "What have you done to me? Who has done this shameful work of removing my garments and replacing them with beggars' rags?" I tore off the rags and threw them from me. I was grieved and with anguish cried out, "Bring me back my garments which I have worn for 23 years and have not discarded in a single instance. Unless you give me back my garments, I shall appeal to the people, who will contribute and return me my own garments which I have worn 23 years."
Okay, so it looks like she's going through a series of visions and dreams. And she can't quite understand what any of them mean just yet. Nightmares is what we call them, right? Dreams to me were always something that was very nice, you know? Nightmares were a different story. Does anyone have any comment? If not, we will move on to the next and we'll see how this kind of culminates.
23 years would be 1844.
23 years would be 1844.
There's one thing I noticed in there. The people when they left Alfie, they were all of one accord, except for the reason why that they were leaving. Remember the reason why that they left? Because of the advice that was given about her husband's health and how he was supposed to, she felt that the Lord wanted him to get up, move about, and do things, and they wanted to keep him bedridden.
Yes.
But I remember, I think it was, I don't want to go ahead of the story, but I think it was that she differed from them, but she didn't know if what she had thought was right unless they experienced it. And that was their choice in leaving, was to see if what she had gotten from the Lord.
And do you remember when they left?
In the middle of the night, And it was.
In a snowstorm
90 miles in a snowstorm.
in the middle of December in a horse and buggy. And
he was
they were headed
already
north.
Sick.
Yes, and he was sick.
He was sick. And so I'm sure that they felt like that she ought to listen to their counsel instead of them.
Well, he had been in a health institute for a little bit.
Yes.
So they were,
I think that's where she didn't realize why they were so cold to her when they returned. Because her husband was in better health when they came back.
but they also had someone who had come in behind them. And remember, he had
Started off.
muddied the waters pretty good and even followed them to where they were going and created discord. And it took them weeks to undo the damage that this fellow had came and said. Okay. So this is still a culmination of what's been going on. We are in the Testimonies, Volume 1. Okay. Volunteer for the next three? Okay, Marlene? Mm-hmm.
I have seen the fulfillment of this dream. At Battle Creek, we met reports which had been put in circulation to injure us, but which had no foundation in truth. Letters had been written by some making a temporary stay at the Health Institute and by others living in Battle Creek to churches in Michigan and other states, expressing fears, doubts, and insinuations in regard to us. I was filled with grief as I listened to a charge from a fellow laborer whom I had respected, that they were hearing from every quarter things which I had spoken against the church at Battle Creek. I was so grieved that I knew not what to say. We found a strong accusing spirit against us. As we became fully convinced of the existing feelings, we felt homesick. We were so disappointed and distressed that I told two of our leading brethren that I did not feel at home, as we met distrust and positive coldness instead of welcome and encouragement, and that I had yet to learn that this was the course to pursue toward those who had broken down among them by overexertion and devotion to the work of God. I then said that we thought we should move from Battle Creek and seek a more retired home. Grieved in spirit beyond measure, I remained at home, dreading to go anywhere among the church for fear of being wounded. Finally, as no one made an effort to relieve my feelings, I felt it to be my duty to call together a number of experienced brethren and sisters and meet the reports which were circulating in regard to us. Weighed down and depressed even to anguish, I met the charges against me, giving a recital of my journey east 1 year since and the painful circumstances attending that journey. I appealed to those present to judge whether my connection with the work and cause of God would lead me to speak lightly of the church at Battle Creek, for whom I had not the slightest alienation of feeling. Was not my interest in the cause and work of God as great as it was possible for theirs to be? My whole experience in life were interwoven with it. I had no separate interest aside from the work. I had invested everything in this cause and had considered no sacrifice too great for me to make in order to advance it. I had not allowed affection for my loved babes to hold me back from performing my duty as God required it in his cause. Maternal love throbbed just as strongly in my heart as in the heart of any mother that I lived or that lived. Yet I had separated from my nursing children and allowed another to act the part of mother to them. I had given unmistakable evidences of my interest in and devotion to the cause of God. I have shown by my works how dear it was to me. Could any produce stronger proof than myself? Were they zealous in the cause of truth? Aye, more were they devoted to it. I could prove greater devotion than anyone living engaged in the work. Had they suffered for the truth's sake? Aye, more. I had not counted my life dear unto me. I had not shunned reproach, suffering, or hardships. When friends and relatives had despaired of my life because disease was preying upon me, I had been borne in my husband's arms to the boat of cars. At one time, after traveling until midnight, we found ourselves in the city of Boston without means. On 2 or 3 occasions, we walked by faith 7 miles. We traveled as far as my strength would allow, and then knelt on the ground and prayed for strength to proceed. Strength was given, and we were enabled to labor earnestly for the good of souls. We allowed no obstacle to deter us from duty or separate us from the work.
Okay. I mean, sometimes I read that and I don't know what to say. You know, the heart of a mother for her children, and that she was willing to leave them for the cause of God and to work for Him. How she must have yearned for her children. And she sees that all of this that she's given up, she's still being attacked. And she can't quite fathom it. She doesn't understand why it's happening to her. But it touched me when I read that part, and I read it over again. And I read it over again, and I thought to myself, I don't know. I don't know if I could have done that. Because it would have pulled at me so much to know that I had responsibility to that child. It's an amazing statement and experience that she goes through. But she's trying to find out what's happening, why she's getting such a cold reception. And so it continues. Who would like to be next? Janet? Okay.
The Spirit manifested in this meeting distressed me greatly. I returned home still burdened, as those present made no effort to relieve me by acknowledging that they were convinced that they had misjudged me and that their suspicions and accusations against me were unjust. They could not condemn me, neither did they make any effort to relieve me. For 15 months, my husband had been so feeble that he had not carried his watch or purse or driven his own team when riding out. But with the present year, he had taken his watch and purse, the latter empty in consequence of our great expenses, and had driven his own team. He had during his sickness refused at different times to accept money from his brethren to the amount of nearly $1,000, telling them that he was in want. Telling them that when he was in want, he would let them know it. We were at last brought to want. My husband felt it his duty, before becoming dependent, to first sell what we could spare. He had some few things in the office and scattered among the brethren in Battle Creek of little value, which he collected and sold. We disposed of nearly $150 worth of furniture. My husband tried to sell our sofa for the meeting house, offering to give $10 of its value, but could not. At one time, our only and very valuable cow died. My husband then, for the first time, felt that he could receive help and addressed a note to a brother, stating that if the church would esteem it a pleasure to make up the loss of the cow, they might do so. But nothing was done about it, only to charge my husband with being insane on the subject of money. The brethren knew him well enough to know that he would never ask for help unless driven to it by stern necessity. And now that he had done it, judge of his feelings and mine when no notice was taken of the matter, only to use it to wound us in our want and deep affliction. At this meeting, my husband humbly confessed that he was wrong in several times of this nature, things of this nature, which he never should have done and never would have done, but for fear of his brethren and a desire to be just right in union with the church. This led those who were injuring him to apparently despise him. We were humbled into the very dust and distressed beyond expression. In this state of things, we started to fill an appointment at Monterey. On the journey, I suffered the keenest anguish of spirit. I tried to explain to myself why it was that our brethren did not understand in regard to our work. I had felt quite sure that when we should meet them, they would know what spirit we were of, and that the Spirit of God in them would answer to the same in us, his humble servants, and there would be union of feeling and sentiment. Instead of this, we were distrusted and suspiciously watched, which was a cause of the greatest perplexity I ever experienced. As I was thus thinking, a portion of the vision given me at Rochester, December 25th, 1865, came like a flash of lightning to my mind, and I immediately related it to my husband.
Okay, we're going to pause right there for a second. Look at what she's going through. Both of them are going through, not just her. She first says in the paragraph, the spirit manifested in the meeting distressed me greatly. So even though she's tried to appeal to them, none of them show any kind of response towards her. They don't care. They have an attitude that they are cold and distant from them, unfeeling that they are going through any kind of anguish. She says that no effort to relieve me by acknowledging that they were convinced that they had misjudged me and that their suspicions and accusations against me were unjust. They could not condemn me, neither did they make any effort to relieve me. And then it goes on to say, what happens now? Their funds have run out. They have expended everything that they've got for the cause. And even though when her husband was sick, people had tried to give them money and they wouldn't accept it. And now when they finally are down and out, their funds are exhausted, their cow dies, and we may think that that's not much of anything, but back then you needed a cow. That was something that provided a lot of your food. So then it says what? The cow dies, and he thinks, okay, he's made every effort. They've tried to sell things that they've had just to get some money in their pocket. So they've done everything that they could possibly do. The cow dies, and now he feels like, okay, maybe I can reach my hand out and see if they will relieve the suffering of, at least to replace the cow. And what's the response? They see their want. You know they can see their want. But now they accuse him of being insane on the matter of money. So then her husband does what? He pleads with them and confesses some things that she says he shouldn't have done. And what result does that get him? It said
Suspiciously watched.
they were suspiciously watched, distrusted, and it says what? It said this led those who were injuring him, so they were injuring by their attitudes and by what they were saying and the things that were going on, that they injuring him to apparently despise him. Go ahead, Mike.
Jerry, forgive me, I don't have the book in front of me. Did I understand that prior to the cow dying, that there were people that was offering them money? Is that correct?
Yes, when he was going through the health institute, he was still sick from before. And we've had a few testimonies before this, and so yes, they had offered them money then, and he felt that it was unnecessary at the time.
Well, my thought would be, would that be of pride, saying that, self-pride, that, no, okay, we don't need this? And obviously not seeing what's down the road, but again, God was, in my opinion, God was saying, okay, we're bringing these people here ahead of time and offer this money. And I'm going to see if pride gets in the way or if you're going to accept it for needing it down the road.
Well, I don't know. I can't answer that question because it doesn't reveal it
Right.
here. So it's summation at that point and speculation, because we don't know why the reason why he did not accept the funds, other than to
Other than pride.
well, it could have been pride, but it also could have been that they were thinking that the Lord would sustain them, and sometimes the Lord does sustain you by bringing, and like you said, it could have been forethought on the Lord's part, and He denied it, and they have, things come about for the Lord's purpose.
Here I brought somebody by, I use that term, here I brought somebody your way, you denied it, so now I'm going to teach you a lesson.
It
I've
could
heard
be.
that many, many times. And I was just, I thought that's what you had said, that, people that came to offer you money, and I thought, wow, that sounds like our Heavenly Father, again, teaching us lessons.
Well, like I said, it doesn't reveal it here, so we, we don't really know. Yes, food for thought.
I think as being a leader, he would not want to take something when he still has something to be able to take care of his needs. And it sounds like from what we're reading here, that in his own mind, he's thinking, why should I take from somebody else while I still have? And surely, when I'm down and out, and I don't have anything anymore, then I can go and ask for something. But maybe I'm thinking from their standpoint that they're not wanting to take in from somebody else that might have a need.
Well, it can also cause bad feelings. Not that we don't see bad feelings already happening.
Well, they could be
but
bad feelings in a different way.
yes.
They could, if they're that same mindset, then if he had taken money, and then he has to come back and ask for more money, then they could have said, what did you do with the money I gave you before?
Yeah, they could be accused of taking money when they didn't need it. And there was a few things, April.
They weren't in a welfare society like we are today, where everyone wants to not work and get money. People back then wanted to work for it.
Yeah,
You didn't want to take money unless you had to.
I agree. I mean, today it's much different. I won't get on that so. Anyway, in the last paragraph, she's talking, of course, that they go ahead and they continue on, and they go and they start speaking to those in Monterey. But we see that these people have wrote letters, and they've gone out defaming them in every direction. So the circle widens. And so now it says that she has another dream, flashes of another vision that have come back to her. Our next volunteer, Sandy, you got a mic? Wait a minute, here we go. Marlene's got one for you. Push the button up. There we go.
I was shown a cluster of trees standing near together, forming a circle. Running up over these trees was a vine which covered them at the top and rested upon them, forming an arbor. Soon I saw the trees swaying to and fro, as though moved by a powerful wind. One branch after another of the vine was shaken from its support until the vine was shaken loose from the trees, except a few tendrils which were left clinging to the lower branches. A person then came up and severed the remaining clinging tendrils of the vine, and it lay prostrated upon the earth. The distress and anguish of my mind as I saw the vine lying upon the ground was beyond description. Many passed and looked pitifully upon it, and I waited anxiously for a friendly hand to raise it up, or to raise it, but no help was offered. I inquired why no hand raised the vine. Presently I saw an angel come to the apparently deserted vine. He spread out his arms and placed them beneath the vine and raised it so that it stood upright, saying, "Stand toward heaven and let thy tendrils entwine about God. Thou art shaken from human support. Thou canst stand in the strength of God and flourish without it. Lean upon God alone, and thou shalt never lean in vain or be shaken therefrom." I felt inexpressibly relief, amounting to joy, as I saw the neglected vine cared for. I turned to the angel and inquired what these things meant. Said he, "Thou art this vine. All this thou wilt experience, and then, when these things occur, thou shalt fully understand the figure of the vine. God will be to thee a present help in time of trouble." From this time I was settled as to my duty and never more free in bearing my testimony to the people. If I ever felt the arm of the Lord holding me up, it was at that meeting. My husband was also free and clear in his preaching, and the testimony of all was, "We have had an excellent meeting." After we returned from Monterey, I felt it my duty to call another meeting. As my brethren made no effort to relieve my feelings, I decided to move forward in the strength of God and again express my feelings and free myself from the suspicions and reports circulated to our injury. I bore my testimony and related things which had been shown me in the past history of some present, warning them of their dangers and reproving their wrong course of action. I stated that I had been placed in most disagreeable positions. When families and individuals were brought before me in vision, it was frequently the case that what was shown me in relation to them was of a private nature, reproving secret sins. I have labored with some for months in regard to wrongs of which others knew nothing. As my brethren see these persons sad and hear them expressing doubts in regard to their acceptance with God, also feelings of despondency, they have cast censure upon me as though I were to blame for their being in trial. Those who thus censored me were entirely ignorant of what they were talking about. I protested against persons sitting inquisitors upon my course of action. It has been the disagreeable work assigned me to reprove private sins, where I, in order to prevent suspicions and jealousy, to give a full explanation of my course and make public that which should be kept private, I should sin against God and wrong the individuals. I have to keep private reproofs of private wrongs to myself, locked in my own breast. Let others judge as they may. I will never betray the confidence reposed in me by the erring and repentant, or reveal to others that which should only be brought before the ones that are guilty. I told those assembled that they must take their hands off and leave me free to act in the fear of God. I left the meeting relieved of a burden.
Okay. This vision that she saw of the vine, you all seen those vines that kind of take over? They're like huge grapevines, and they take over and they just entwine themselves up in the trees. And then I've got a few of them around where I live, and I mean they've just got a death grip on these trees. And they're up all along because they always go for where the most light is. And so they tend to not only have that appearance, they're very strong in nature. So she sees this vine be tore from the trees by a mighty wind. It falls to the ground. And she's in distress about it. And the angel comes and tells her what it's about. And that it's a life experience that she has to go through. And we have to learn, she's learning that she's going to have to put all of her trust, all of her faith in God. And I see where that applies to all of us. We are going to lose the support of people that we thought were our friends, our families. We're going to have no one left but the Lord. And we need to make it our firm decision that He is the one who will uphold us when all the storms of life rip us from the anchors that we've had. And it's not a pleasant experience, Cliff.
I'm going back to the vision that she had, as we laid on page 578, where she saw the brother in the Battle Creek coming to her house.
Mm-hmm.
And she started to let them in, and she went back, took a second look, and the scene had changed.
Yes.
And it looked like a Catholic procession.
Yes.
I'm thinking in relation to the rest of what we read here, does that mean that the same spirit of oppression and censor that that church at that time expressed towards true believers, people in Battle Creek were expressing towards her as well? I mean, there's two parts to this story.
Yes.
There's her dependence upon God alone instead of fellow brothers, but those brothers seem to be motivated by a spirit that was not God.
That's right. And that's what we were talking about that last week also, that all these things culminate, and the spirit that was expressed by a lot of the people, they were being accusing towards her, they were spreading vicious things that weren't even true. All these things started coming down on them, and this was her experience, that as what did it say in the beginning? I can't remember how long she said that this was going on. From December 19th, 1866 through April 25th of 1867. So there's been quite a long time that she's gone through, and as she's seeing the support of what she felt that were very good friends and fellow believers, she's seeing all of that withdrawn, and even a spirit of Antichrist manifested. So I'm sure that there are a few of us that have gone through episodes, that we've, it's not been pleasurable for us. Go ahead.
I was just thinking about how valuable the testimonies are to us in these days. Because the Lord is, through her writings and her experiences, letting us know. Because in her day, they were looking for Jesus' second coming. And this was the time from the disappointment on. And this is the time when, if they had accepted the 1888 message of righteousness by Christ, then they could have gone to heaven. So they were experiencing what we will experience in these last days.
Yes.
And reading her experience and knowing that the angel came and told her the vine was her, then we can glean on that and lean on that when we start seeing the exact same things happen to us by our fellow brethren, and all the things that they are taking and believing now that aren't our doctrines. And then when we finally decide we're going to stand up, or when we're brought to stand up for what we believe, they're going to turn on us. And we have this experience that she's been through to help us. Because all these things that have gone before are for our admonition. And then we can turn to God in those days and say, what you did for her, I know you can do it.
And he does.
I just think that the mere fact that most of our brethren have set aside for writing and don't see the need for them, these very stories and experiences.
Mankind doesn't change in the depravity of the mind.
And they repeat themselves.
Only as we come and draw closer to God that we can get rid of that. But if we're left to our own devices, we can think up so many different things to hurt our neighbors. I was just thinking, it reminded me as you were talking, the vision where she had the dream. She was, her people were fixing her hair and her dress, and Roger related that she was adamant about how long she'd had those garments, and he pointed out that it was back to 1844.
She'd been saying the same message all that time and had not changed. And
But-
they come in to change her garment.
And let's think about that for a second, because the change of garment was from something that she wore on a daily basis, and it was, she had gone through dress reform and everything, and she had caused the people to understand this. And then in the dream, she wakes up in rags. What does clothing represent? Christ's righteousness, character. What do we see others doing to her? Stripping her of that and giving her nothing but filthy rags to wear. She's trying to walk in the admonition of the Lord, and others are trying to tear it from her. It's a rebuke to them. That kind of spirit, always lashes out. So all these dreams, we can kind of put together. But we see that, those kind of nightmares, they horrify you. She wakes up, her husband wakes up and finally has to wake her up because she's crying. All these things are going on. We see vision after dream. We finally get a little bit of an explanation here in the end, to where the Lord has revealed to her that all these things where you thought you had friends and fellowship and cohesiveness with fellow believers, it makes you think about what's coming. We need to pray for each other, that we will all be able to stand. I love you all. You're in my prayers all the time. We can't stand without each other's prayers. We need to be able to go to God and pray for each other. we never know what each one of us is going through. Sometimes I'm sure that all of us can be a little more silent of what's actually happening in our lives. So then it goes on and it says what? She goes ahead and she goes back to Battle Creek, and she does what? She calls another meeting. She feels that she must express what's going on in her life and try and get these people to understand. She feels that the Lord has told her to focus differently, but she wants to nip this. So she goes back into it. And she tells them she bore her testimony and related things which had been shown her in past history of some present, warning them of their dangers and reproving their wrong courses of action. She even gets into where some of the things that have been shown to her relating to families or individuals. How many times have we ourselves read over different things that she had to address certain things about an individual's life? And that, these were not pleasant duties for her. I mean, we always tend to want to kill the messenger, don't we? The message is too hard to bear. So we figure if we either don't hear the message, it won't affect us. But it really does. So she sees that others have taken this to the point where they're talking about it and accusing her. It says, as my brethren see these persons sad and hear them express doubts in regard to their acceptance with God, also feelings of despondency, that they have cast censure upon me, as though I were to blame for their being in trial. Isn't that amazing? She's telling them what the Lord would have them to change in their lives, and it's her fault. And she must possibly be a troublemaker in this respect, because she's butting in and telling them they have problems. We know she's not a troublemaker.
She also said that she doesn't tell that to everyone.
No.
She keeps that in her heart. The Lord has shown her. She doesn't gossip.
No, she doesn't gossip. It says it, that she's not relating any of this. But it says, those who censured me were entirely ignorant of what they were talking about. So there's been some sort of speculation going on. Gossiping. And then they have flipped it so that they think that they are making it sound like she's the one, and she's trying to set them straight, that she's never done this and that she would never do this. God is holding her in a confidence, and she's not willing to break that confidence with the Lord.
It's interesting that in the Old Testament times, especially the building of the temple, penalty for gossip was fairly severe. It was death. So we seem to take it lightly.
Mm-hmm.
The Lord probably looks at things a little differently than we do. So this thing of gossip that was going on in the church was very detrimental to God's work.
Well, we see, what did Lucifer do?
Gossip.
He gossiped. He made it up. And it spread like wildfire. It's not something that isn't harmful. A third of the angels cast out of heaven. And we don't really know what size that number is, but it has to be vast. So she says, were I, in order to prevent suspicions and jealousy, to give a full explanation of my course and make public that which should be kept private, I should sin against God and wrong the individuals. Her moral character. It stands right there. So she finally tells these people who have wronged her all this time, in the end, what's she tell them? She says, I told those assembled that they must take their hands off and leave me free to act in the fear of God. And so she says, I left the meeting relieved of a heavy burden. She's carried this with her for how long? Months. Months. But the Lord gave her strength. When He finally explained to her about the vine and the vision, and that all these other things culminated, He told her, He said, this is not where your foundation lies. Stand straight and look to heaven and grow towards heaven. And that's a lesson for us all.